A new U.S. strategy could push for more aggressive responses to Iran-backed forces, its Shiite Muslim proxies in Iraq and Syria, and its support for Muslim militant groups. Here's a report.
U.S. President Donald Trump is reviewing a plan that would step up the pressure on Tehran to curb its ballistic missile programs and support for armed groups. The proposal, readied by his top officials including Defense Secretary James Mattis and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, is confidential, but reports say it is a broad strategy with specific targets. Officials said it will target Iran's funding of armed and militant groups. It will also work to stop what it described as Iranian destabilization in the terror-torn regions of Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. The plan also covers cyber espionage and nuclear proliferation. But as in the case of Afghanistan and Syria, Trump is expected to leave the implementation of this broad strategy to U.S. military commanders on the ground, backed, of course, by diplomats and other officials. The plan, however, does not include U.S. military operations against Iran proxies in Syria and Iraq, as it could weaken their fight against the Islamic State. But U.S. naval vessels will be authorized to open fire if harassed by Iranian ships. The U.S. will also move aggressively to counter Iranian arms shipments to the Shia Houthi rebels in Yemen and to the Palestinians in Gaza. The new proposal could be made public before the end of this month. Bureau Report, WION.
We're now joined by Meryl Golampur from Tehran. Thanks for joining us. How is the Iranian government likely to respond to these proposals?
Well, Iran has yet to issue a formal response to this proposal. I think that Iranian official responses will be very similar to what they showed after the Trump administration announced sanctions 2 months ago in mid-July. So as a response to Trump policies, they have formally stated that they will show proportionate and strong responses, and they perceive sanctions to be a violation of nuclear deal. So basically what they have done already is that Iranian officials have threatened to relaunch a nuclear program if the Trump administration continues to threaten and sanction the country. So basically what happened when they put the sanctions, renewed basically the sanctions 2 months ago, was that Iranian President Hassan Rouhani told lawmakers that in an hour and a day Iran could return to a more advanced nuclear level than at the beginning of the negotiations. And he also clarified that they are definitely not going to act in a way that gets them entangled in the politics of the American government and Trump. So I think there is a good chance that Iranian officials probably would consider reinvigorating the nuclear program.
Meryl, how is the Iranian government likely to respond to these kind of things? And does the government suspect that Trump wants to terminate the nuclear deal altogether?
Well, Trump was talking about shredding the Iran nuclear deal because he thought that it was a bad deal for so long. Actually, since he was campaigning for presidency, he was seeking ways to declare Iran is in violation of the nuclear deal. But what happened was that experts, including the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, which is the nuclear watchdog agency in charge of verifying Iran's compliance with this obligation, says that Iran actually has complied. So what happened then? Trump's administration, in order to get around the pesky detail, they tried to make the case that Iran is violating the spirit of the deal and not the letter. And they point to Iran's ballistic missile test and its presumed support for Hezbollah. And as we see now, they are trying to impose basically more pressure on the Iranian authorities. So it appears that, yes, the aim of all this might be for him to abort the deal.
And Meryl, is there any immediate prospects of talks with the United States at this point?
Well, It seems that a strengthening of diplomatic ties between Iran and the U.S. will be very unlikely under Trump administration, as it was also during the previous hardliner president in Iran, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. But now what's happening in Iran is that we have a president and a party in power which is moderate and aspires to cooperate with the world and to improve diplomatic ties. But the Trump's policy approach seems to not to favor that, because his policy appears an uptick in military operations across the Middle East region. For instance, in 1 week in Yemen, Trump reportedly launched more airstrikes than President Obama did in any year of his presidency. He also has dropped what he calls mother of all bombs in Afghanistan to show as a sign of power in the region. So it seems that he has a more antagonism towards the Iranian government than a will to repair politic ties. So I don't think that there would be any prospects. I hope that it would happen, but I don't think that any expert would agree that there is prospects for betterment of the relations between Iran and the U.S.
All right, Meryl, thank you so much for all of those updates from Tehran.